Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Christopher, and this is it's doing that again. So, no, you do not start until I have told you. Okay, so this is another one of those videos that I wanted to do. I've never been to Antietam. My understanding is not much happened there. It was very, yeah, it was brutal. So this is American Battlefield Trust. There are a few people that I know that know about this channel. Panda, a few others. Greg. I think you would, if you've never seen it, you will love the channel. I think because there's a lot of Civil War stuff. But Battle of Antietam, I've never been to. I don't actually know. I know what happened. I know the battle's real. It did take place. But other than that, I think George McClellan fought Robert E. Lee on this one. I don't remember. So let's get into it.
Following a string of summer victories, most recently at 2nd Manassas, in early September 1862, Confederate General Robert E. Lee seeks to maintain his hard-earned initiative. It is the first time Lee's Confederates have set foot on Union soil. Lee's march into Maryland is a bold gamble. He hopes to bring the Union Army to battle and deliver another crushing defeat on the U.S. Capitol's doorstep. But Lee's fortunes take a turn. He must divide his army to deal with the strong Union force at Harper's Ferry. To make matters worse,
little side note, Harper's Ferry, this is 1862. Harper's Ferry in... what year was it? 1855? 56? Harper's Ferry, Robert E. Lee went to leading the Marines, and that was where he attacked, well, he didn't attack, that's where he laid siege at a fire station going after John Brown. John Brown was a man who was not very good at much. Not, no offense to John Brown. He just, everything he tried to do, he kind of failed at. And then, this stupid thing. And then, John Brown just, he was born in Ohio, was anti-slavery, and something snapped. And the Bleeding Kansas situation, he went there, started a fight, and decided that he was going to free slaves, kill slave owners, and he was kind of the silent starter building up to the Civil War. But I only give that backstory because Harper's Ferry is where Robert E. Lee was sent, and he captured John Brown at Harper's Ferry, who was at a fire station. As I said, he was trying to get into a gun storage for the military at the time, and he was captured and then later hanged. And several, Robert E. Lee was there, Stonewall Jackson, who didn't go by Stonewall at the time, never did. He was just Jackson. He was there. But there was a lot of people there, and that's all side note. But I only pause that just to kind of point that out, that he kind of had been there before.
His opponent, General George B. McClellan, moves with unusual speed in pursuit. His confidence boosted with an intercepted copy of Lee's operational plan. McClellan pushes Lee's thin ranks in the gaps of South Mountain. Though the Southerners fall back, the fight here buys Lee time to find a battleground of his choosing.
For people who don't know about George McClellan, brilliant in training a soldier, brilliant in getting them prepared, brilliant in getting them ready to fight, brilliant in making them want to fight. Not very good in leading people into battle. If you've ever seen Band of Brothers, the David Schwimmer's real name, the character he portrays, and I cannot think of the name. He was a tough guy. Not saying McClellan was that tough. McClellan was loved. He was good. But somehow when he got into battle, like he could have 50,000 people, and you could have 25,000. He was convinced you probably had 225,000. So he was not going to attack you. He was very skittish in that aspect. But he had the confidence of someone that, you know, he himself could win a battle against 1 million people. He just never showed it. Rest in peace, George McClellan. You did a lot for us, for the Union. But ultimately, I think what happened, him getting fired, was the best thing for us. Not for the Confederacy. Confederates were like, keep him. He's good.
Robert E. Lee selects a strong defensive position amidst the tidy rolling German farm fields bordering a swiftly flowing creek, the Antietam. But Lee is bluffing. His line on September 15th is a mirage designed to buy time to gather his forces. Stonewall Jackson has taken Harper's Ferry and is marching to join him. McClellan pauses for 2 days in order to better understand Lee's position. He is convinced that Lee heavily outnumbers him. Yet Lee's bluff comes with heavy risk. If he is forced to retreat, there's only one escape route across the Potomac back to Virginia. On the afternoon of September 16th, McClellan decides to attack. He'll first hit Lee's left, then his right, before finishing things in the center. After forwarding troops across Antietam Creek, McClellan's first attack begins early Wednesday morning, September 17th, as the soldiers of Joe Hooker's First Corps march south, aiming for the Dunker Church. But Confederates occupy the high ground around it and unleash destructive artillery fire on Hooker's men to their front and right, while Stonewall Jackson's infantry engages them near Miller's cornfield. Hooker responds with his own guns. Some call it artillery hell. The battle here quickly escalates into some of the most savage fighting of the Civil War. To the west, John Gibbon's Iron Brigade fares better. Marching through and around the cornfield, they enter the West Woods, where they withstand vicious Confederate counterattacks. By 7 a.m., Hooker is making progress in the cornfield, and Jackson's line, Lee's left flank, is under a very real threat of collapse. But just then, momentum shifts. John Bell Hood's hard-fighting division counterattacks through the cornfield and drives back Hooker, though at a frightful loss. Hooker calls for support from Major General Joseph Mansfield's 12th Corps. Mansfield advances his divisions in a formation that make them an easy target for Confederate artillery, and Mansfield is mortally wounded within minutes of entering the front lines. Yet one division of the 12th Corps manages to break through the Confederate line and reaches the Dunker Church. Before he can follow up on this initial success, General Hooker gets shot in the foot and leaves the fight. Lacking a leader to unite the 1st and 12th Corps, there is no rapid follow-through on the Union success at Dunker Church.
For those who don't know, just a quick little side note about Hooker. Hooker used to have his men, when they were out and about marching, they would have women following behind. They would set up a camp, and then he would allow his men to fornicate with those women. The women that would follow would usually trade sex for money. So the women that followed the camp were called Hooker's girls, or Hooker's gals, something like that. It later got shortened to hookers, and the term became women who took money in exchange for sex. And then from there, somehow, prostitutes got a term. Just a little side thing that I found interesting.
With little sense of the rebel positions, around 9 a.m., General Edwin Sumner leads his 2nd Corps into the fight. Though his corps, 3 divisions strong, is nearly half the size of Lee's entire army, Sumner's columns are strung out, and he attacks with but 1 division. Sumner intends to turn the Confederate left flank, but it's his own that's vulnerable. Sumner's largest division, that of John Sedgwick, moves into the West Woods and is overwhelmed by a powerful Confederate counterattack. Sedgwick falls back with barely half of his men. Lee's left flank had been battered and bruised, but not broken. Although occasional fighting still occurs in the vicinity, by mid-morning, the battle shifts further south toward an old sunken farm road.
Oh, it's an ad. I don't know much about Antietam, the battle. So this is interesting for me. I just know it's considered one of the most brutal, like, one-day battles or something like that, or the most amount of death in like a day. It's ridiculous.
Of the 10 regiments of William French's division of Sumner's 2nd Corps, only 3 had ever been in a battle. Awaiting them are 2 of D.H. Hill's brigades, Rhodes' Alabamians and Anderson's North Carolinians, men that had seen plenty of combat. They had taken control of an old wagon shortcut, a portion of it sunken by frequent use. Hill's veterans inflict 1,700 casualties on French's division. At 10:30, reinforcements pour in on both sides. Lee commits the last of his reserves in the vicinity to extend Hill's right, while Richardson's division arrives to reinforce French. An Alabama officer ordered to realign his regiment mistakenly shouts "about face" amid the battle's roar. All along the sunken road, it looks as if a general retreat has been ordered. 5 regiments of Confederates begin to fall back towards Sharpsburg. Lee's center is now in grave danger of collapse. Richardson's advance is blunted by artillery from General James Longstreet at Piper Farm, and further assaulted by small but ferocious counterattacks organized by D.H. Hill. Once again, Lee adeptly moves smaller units to stop McClellan's large blue tide. General Richardson is fatally wounded, and without his initiative, the Union advance grinds to yet another halt. Though 12,000 fresh men of the 6th Corps have just arrived at the front, General McClellan uses them to bolster his shattered right flank, and at the sunken road misses an opportunity to crack Lee's line wide open. By 1:30, when the fighting ebbs here, 5,600 men lay dead or wounded in an area that becomes known as the Bloody Lane. Antietam's battle toll is 17,500 and climbing. Lee's right flank is arguably his most critical. It's the closest to his escape route home. Yet by mid-morning, he has only 3,000 to defend it. Across the creek, Ambrose Burnside's 9th Corps waits. He has been told to launch a diversionary attack on the Confederate right to draw attention away from Hooker's assault. But Burnside has been commanded to hold until given explicit orders to attack. Orders that do not reach him until 10 a.m. This 2-hour delay gives Lee time to shift crucial artillery to his right flank. Burnside opts to divide his force. He sends one division under Isaac Rodman 3/4 of a mile downstream to cross at Snavely's Ford. His other divisions will be funneled across a 12-foot wide bridge. 100 feet above it stand 400 Georgians, backed by 12 cannon. Burnside's men will cross the bridge at point-blank range. Crook's Union Brigade leads the first charge, but emerges 350 yards upstream and never makes the assault. At 11 a.m., Naugle's brigade tries again, but is blasted into retreat before even reaching the bridge. At 1 p.m., another charge is made, this time by Ferrero's twin 51st. They win the bridge at last. Around this same time, Rodman's division gets across Antietam Creek. Fearing they are about to be flanked, the Georgians finally fall back. And for the third time today, Lee's Army of Northern Virginia is on the verge of a resounding defeat. Lee is low on reserve troops, and Union artillery has begun to bombard the escape route through Sharpsburg. But Lee is once more spared by circumstance. Burnside takes 2 hours to get his 10,000 through the bottleneck at the bridge over Antietam Creek. He finally begins his march toward Lee's right flank at 3, leaving 2 full brigades in reserve. He intends to cut off Lee's retreat. His 1-mile-wide attack is initially successful, with 1 division pushing toward the Harper's Ferry Road, while elements of 2 other brigades come to blows with D.R. Jones' Confederates. Only Robert Toombs' 700-man brigade is left to defend Lee's right flank. Many Confederates panic and run wild through the streets of Sharpsburg. But at 4 p.m., A.P. Hill's Light Division arrives after a forced march from Harper's Ferry. Despite their 17-mile march that day, Hill's exhausted men immediately strike Burnside's exposed left flank. Made up largely of new and inexperienced recruits, these green troops stand in high corn and barely see what hits them. A.P. Hill's timely arrival saves Lee's army. 12 hours of savage bloodshed has withered Lee's army to 30,000. Though the fighting has ended, he remains on the field till the next day, ready for battle. McClellan considers an attack, but once again pauses and allows Lee to slip back into Virginia to fight again. So who won the battle at Antietam? McClellan's army controlled the field and arguably saved the nation by driving Lee from the U.S. Capitol's doorstep. But many believe he missed a true opportunity to inflict a fatal blow on the Army of Northern Virginia.
He missed an opportunity to strike a blow. Meade missed an opportunity to strike a blow. It's easy to say that now, but we have to live in that moment when it happened. McClellan was not great in terms of the battle. Meade was a great general. I don't fault either of them for not taking that strike, because you don't necessarily know that it's not a trap or something like that. So, you know, the armchair quarterback kind of thing, I don't fault the people for not doing it. If they did it and it failed, we would look at it and be like, well, why'd they do that? You know what I mean? So it's a no-win situation, I view it as. Kind of not fair in a way.
For failing to actively pursue Lee, President Lincoln permanently relieves McClellan of his command 2 months later. In one day, more than 3,600 men were killed. 19,000 were wounded and captured. More American dead than Pearl Harbor, D-Day, or 9/11. Shocking portraits taken by Alexander Gardner are displayed in the North, exposing the grim realities of the war to all who see them. President Lincoln uses the victory to announce the Emancipation Proclamation, turning the conflict into a war destined to change the very nature of American society.
Him announcing that, by the way, was also pivotal, because the French and the British were really close to wanting to step in and stop the war. And if they would have tried to do that, it would have been granting the South, the Confederate States of America, and the North, the United States. By him doing that, it turned the war from states' rights, we can secede, to you're seceding over slavery and slavery is abolished. And now you're forcing England and France. England for sure had abolished slavery. France, I don't know. But I'm going to say yes. I don't know. Maybe they never had them. I have no idea, now that I think about it. It made it that if you step into this war to stop it, you're saying slavery's okay. And they've abolished slavery in their own country, so you're basically saying slavery's fine. And when that was announced, that basically the British people were like, ooh. It gave the British people a chance to look at it and say, oh, no, we know which side we're on now. And so he needed to announce that to kind of keep others out so that he could focus on the South. Because the British had already, with Lincoln getting involved in stopping the British ship that had 2 Confederate politicians on there, The British wanted to go to war, which is funny because the British used to do that to us during the War of 18, leading up to the War of 1812, where they were like, no, we're stopping it, and we're impressing these people. So we did it to them. They didn't like it. They wanted to go to war. Funny how that works out. But, as Lincoln said, one war at a time. He never was going to go to war with the British, But this was his way of making sure that they stayed out.
By freeing the slaves, Lincoln also signaled the intent to use African Americans as soldiers. Before the end of the war, almost 180,000 would serve their country. September 17th, 1862, remains the bloodiest single day in American history.
There are cemeteries all around where I'm from, and north of that, small towns, and it's always interesting to go through, and you see a small section where, like a small town, where there might be 40 graves, and these are soldiers who died in the Civil War, and it'll tell you what battle they died in, and it's always sad, because none of these people were extremely old. They were teenagers, early 20s, and so many young people who just lost their life. And I'm not getting into the reasons of the war or anything like that. I'm just saying, just visualize the youth that this country lost because of the war. Both sides, North and South. And I always think about, what those kids who died, what kind of contribution could they have made? Maybe they could have become a doctor, and maybe they could have perfected a safer way of doing surgery. Maybe one of them comes about to create some mechanical device, or just the potential is what I'm talking about. And it's always just sad to think that so many, I'm a little bit older, but I think, man, when I was 18, what if 19, 20, 21, what if I died? I don't even know who I am at that point in my life, let alone to die in a war. It's just because I think, if I died at 21 in a war, I would have lived an additional period of my life. If I was 21 when I died, I'm 43 now. I would have lived an entire life. It's sad, Stuff like this hits me a little bit harder than, some battle that happened in the 1400s or in the 700s. It also affects me a little bit more because this is America. It's just sad. So I'm going to end this here. Like and subscribe. I would show you my visit to Antietam, but I haven't been. I would love to go. So until next time, have a good day, have a good night.